I'm a geriatrician in the Department of Veterans Affairs. I am the head of VA's Geriatrics and Extended Care Clinical Operations. Before I went to medical school, I was a budding paleontologist, so I've long had an interest in things that are old. Some of the objectives I said that we pursue in VA's geriatrics and extended care programs. One is to empower. So I'm in a really good statement here that we really want to empower veterans and their family, and they want this. You know, empower veterans and their family caregivers to rise above the challenges of aging, disability, and chronic disease. And we want to help them live with optimal independence, safety, health, and purpose. We want to increase help and in all ways of the meaning of access, increase access, improve quality, and reduce total cost of care. A few questions I want to weave in my few minutes up here. What's needed for veteran-driven care? I'm going to talk about veterans, but it really applies, you know, put your own word in there. How do we shift care from facility to the home? Can we focus on the individual instead of the population? Can we focus on the individual's needs rather than the sort of needs and structure of the system? How can we best support family caregivers? And I'm going to whiz through a few of some of the VA activities, some of the things we've done in VA over the last decade that I think are relevant to this, and show a little demonstration of where we are. We're not at all where we need to be, but just some things that I think pull together. Shift care to home, home-based primary care, home telehealth, medical foster homes, smart homes. Any common word in there? Yes, an electronic record in the home. That's right. So we've, you know, in this person-centered care, veteran-centered care, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. We really, from my perspective, really need to start with the individuals and what is that person's, what are their goals of care, very individualized goals of care. I'm a physician. Many of us think that we've been doing really well with goals of care for a long time, and I believe we've been very wrong about that. But I think we are escalating our abilities to really build that into the system, elicit goals of care, document goals of care, and then the coordination element of that, and how do we get those goals of care to travel with that individual wherever they are seeking care, wherever they end up getting care. Sometimes it's pretty urgent. So really focusing on that and carrying it through. I think we can help shape where we need to go by really identifying with the caregivers and the patients, those who are going to receive the care, and really what are their daily needs. So I think, you know, many of you are doing this kind of field work and really finding out what do I need to get through the day, what do I need to get through the week, what are my challenges. Empowering them. Reliable, equitable care in all settings is another area that I've put a fair bit of effort into for a few years, and I'll bring up a couple of examples of that. And in many instances, I think I think we will benefit society if we can bring care to the home, and I think technology is going to really help us a lot. And how do we reach those in rural areas? And we've done some work through with collaborations with like Administration for Community Living and some of the things we've done, and it's partnerships that get us there. So how do we honor goals of care across all care settings, and how can we shift care? Well, in VA we've made a very deliberate effort to shift care from facility-based to home and community-based over the past. Well, I've been in this position for 14 years, and that's been a big part of what I've driven. I've put a spectrum of services here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of them. VA's home-based primary care program is one of our largest and most effective in-home services, and I'm really thrilled that it is likely to be emerging in Medicare soon. When I came to Washington, that was one of my goals, was to help move home-based primary care concept into Medicare. I worked with a half a dozen other renegades, and we were successful at getting Independence at Home passed as part of the Affordable Care Act. It's in its third year of the Medicare demonstration, and I'm very optimistic that will help. Home-based primary care is comprehensive, so think about home care that you're familiar with, and home-based primary care is very different from and complementary to that. So it's comprehensive as opposed to specific problem focus. So we're going to take care of your heart failure and your dementia and your bad hip and your visual impairment and your depression. And if you need a ramp, we'll build a ramp to get you in and out of your house or help you get in and out of your house better. It's longitudinal, so rather than episodic. We bring you in. The conditions we bring you in for tend to not go away. So we're likely to be your healthcare team for the rest of your life. And it's interdisciplinary. Physician, nurse, social worker, dietitian, rehabilitation therapist. I'm very proud in 2006 we put a mental health provider on every team in the country. Pharmacist. I hope I didn't leave anybody out, but it's a strong team. Sounds wildly expensive, doesn't it? But the economics of it are such that if we target this well, and so we've worked to do that, then those are very expensive people, and we reduce their total cost of care. Medical foster home I'm going to touch on in a minute. That's some of our spectrum. The comprehensive part, the community partnerships are crucial. We believe in this in VA. This is, I said, since I took over in 2000, this is the growth curve of VA's home-based primary care. We've quadrupled. I'm not done yet. I think we need to double where we are now. And we are about 34,000 today, 34,000 veterans getting home-based primary care every day. Can we increase access, improve quality, and lower total cost of care? We had a little talk about economics. I think we recognize that, and in some ways maybe we're not supposed to be thinking about economic limits, but I just want to say that there is a reality to this. This is an expensive group of patients, and we can achieve this because we've demonstrated it in home-based primary care. People have demonstrated in hospice and palliative care and medical foster home. I'll explain that in a minute. So, and I think that we can continue to do better, and technology is one way that we will, I believe, do better. So just a few examples: home telehealth to support serious chronic disease management. We've seen examples of it. We do that in VA, about 60,000 veterans every day getting home telehealth. Home telehealth to expand the reach of some of our programs and services. Home-based primary care, we're now on 12 Indian reservations, some highly rural areas, and we feel that we can extend our reach with the help of clinical video telehealth, and we do clinical video telehealth face-to-face. Screen communications can really help in a lot of ways in medicine and establish or maintain trust. I mean, making a visit into someone's home is a very personal event. It changes the dynamic. That helps establish trust. And then you can build upon that, and the technology there's almost like no barrier there anymore. Computerized patient record system, VA's record, so I can sit down at the Washington, D.C. Medical Center. Somebody comes to me from, Santa Monica, Portland, Puerto Rico, and in 3 clicks, I have their medical record. It's right there, and it's everything. It's everything they've ever, in the VA system, every part they've ever been in the VA system, every CAT scan they've ever had, I got it. Now, I said equitable. About 6 years ago, I was grumbling again, and I said, I'm really not happy right now because VA has this incredible electronic health record. We have this incredible home-based primary care team. They're taking care of some of our most medically complex and disabled veterans that we have, and yet when that provider is in the home, they have no access to the medical record. Now you can say, oh, yeah, you can connect on your laptop. All right, but I want equitable, reliable. I said a good proportion of our veterans do not have telephones, living in rural areas, and even in West LA, places like West Palm Beach, I carried a laptop. I said, okay, let's go. I'll take the best laptop we have and the best connectivity you have. I'm going to travel around the country as I'm going, and I'm going to flip this open and see if I can connect and how reliable that is. So it was very unreliable, and I wanted equitable care. So at the same time, we had a program, some folks building it, and they did it. They've done it. It's a great system now, mobile electronic documentation. So you plug it in the morning, you load all of your patients in, and it's 12 months or however you want to do it, all of their clinic notes, every clinic, every cardiology, wherever they've been, every clinic note, every lab test, every x-ray result, every hospital discharge summary, it's all their medications, it's all there. Looks and functions like you're at the desktop in the clinic. You can put your note into it. So I think that's a nice move for us. There are a lot of other applications for that in the homeless care and emergency preparation, so it's nice to have that. Point of care diagnostics technology is really helping us move forward with a lot of that, so we can get in a home and we can do, impedance testing. We can find out what's going on in their heart in ways well before their weight changes. We can understand things, so a lot of blood tests, oxygen. There are a lot of things that we can do right there, get an electrocardiogram, get chest x-rays. And a key part of this, the cost part, is focus. And so I really push my group to focus on the 5% of the population that accounts for half of our healthcare costs, and really not try to stay away from the 50% of our population that accounts for 4% of healthcare costs, because most anything we do in that sector is only going to increase our healthcare costs. Just to touch on demographics, I think we all recognize these curves in the U.S. population, the fastest growing sector, the U.S. population, and those Americans over the age of 85, increasing about 74% in the 20 years between 2000 and 2020. That was projected. What's the veteran over the age of 85 graph look like? So nearly tripled, and in half that time. And in fact doubled in the 5 years between 2000 and 2005. So we've really been pushing. We've recognized this. We're working hard to try to move ahead and do some things. So I said that we can lower cost and we can have an impact, and we're shifting care, we believe. This graph, the blue line across the middle, that's veterans, that's VA's delivery of nursing home care in our homes, in the purchased community homes. I just showed you the growth curve of doubling the population, tripling really in the 10 years between 2000 and 2010. The population over the age of 85, veterans, tripled, yet the number in nursing homes went up 30%. And a big part of that, the bottom line, is our growth in non-institutional care and home and community-based services. This has been done outside the VA. I mean, VA is a part of this movement. We're certainly not, by any means all of it, but rebalancing concept is an important one here, that we can rebalance. I don't know that we ever were balanced, but that's a part of the shift of care from facility to the home. And just, we do ethnographic work. Intel, our partners, have done some really nice work with us to get into the homes as an outside source and find out from the veterans and their families, how does this impact your lives? And they tell us very consistently and strongly it has a huge impact on their life. As and this is the caregiver and the veteran both felt like this made a great deal of difference in their lives. They don't know that he didn't think he could have been there. She didn't think she would have made it through to this point, these programs and services really impact them. Medical foster home. I wrote up a supplemental proposal for Congress in 2008, and I called it Medical Foster Home, Where Heroes Meet Angels. If you ever get into one of these homes, you'll see why I called it that. Medical foster home is it's a concept of, for veterans who need nursing home level of care but do not want to go into a nursing home, we find an option. What they're really lacking is a family caregiver. Family caregivers can do amazing things, but if you do not have a family caregiver, maybe the technology will get there someday, but right now you really need somebody. Sometimes people need somebody, and they recognize for their own safety and health, I cannot live here anymore. Well, so in medical foster home, we find someone in the community who will open their home and their heart and take in a veteran, or two, or three. In our program, you're allowed to have 3 people in your home. It has to be your home. You live there. Personal home, you can take care of up to 3 people. 1 or 2 of those might be your own family members. And then we support that with home-based primary care or another VA interdisciplinary home care team. It's seeming to be really wonderfully successful. We're now in 43 states and territories. Geriatrics and extended care, we do not have an age cutoff. It's just the conditions we focus on are fortunately more prevalent in an older population, but we take care of veterans of all ages. We've talked a little bit about literacy. I thought this was an interesting one in Florida, and this veteran with a severe neurologic problem did not want to go into a nursing home, and we lined up someone, and it was like, well, I don't think this is going to work. She speaks Spanish and not English. You speak English and not Spanish. And they both kind of communicated like, we think we can make this work. 2 months later, he was very proud. He was teaching her English. She was very proud. She was teaching him Spanish. I remember walking into a home in Dallas, Texas. Had a World War II veteran, had dementia, could not remember what he had for breakfast that day, but he sure remembered what they fed him when he got off the boat near Dunkirk in 1944. There was also a 23-year-old veteran in a wheelchair, traumatic brain injury. He, serious injury, he was in a wheelchair. He smiled the entire time I was there. His place was wired. He had 3 big screens on the wall. He was connecting with his friends, that interface, that, engagement, purpose, he had that. Some of the things we're doing to help support caregivers are VA social work service through some web interactions. They really are trying to get out and help caregivers. There's a VA website specifically for caregivers, and it's a caregiver toolbox. Some tools that can help you in your role as a caregiver. Help near home if you need some help nearby, which I think is a big part of what we could do in that community sense to help this move forward. Caregiver connections, some things that help you connect with other people in similar situations. In the Chronicles, tell your stories, share your stories, learn from each other, and the support you can get from each other. And a support line. We also have a class to help teach caregivers how to use technology to their advantage. In geriatrics and extended care, we have a website that really covers our spectrum of home and community-based services. So for veterans or family members, anybody who wants to get in and find out what are our services, what are the eligibility requirements, shared decision-making, get that in the record. Smart homes, we have a small number of smart homes that have been built for veterans with serious traumatic brain injury, polytrauma. They're located around our polytrauma centers, or they've done this in some individual homes as well, and they're meant to be a rehabilitation phase. So for 6 months or so, you're going to be in this place where you have a lot of technology that supports you as well as care, and as you're going through intense rehabilitation. So it really does help the veteran regain their function faster. There's motivational factors in there. A lot of elements of that. Some of the benefits involve safety, some of the prosthetic elements, some substitutions of how can I get this done because I can't physically do it, some cues, some reminders, reports that are generated, progress, so that you can graphically see how you're doing, apps that help you quit smoking, apps that help you with your post-traumatic stress disorder, a variety of things. Okay, so winding down, we had a little conversation about this yesterday. I was really pleased. This is a statement that I put into a manuscript that is to be published next month, that we need robust methods of analysis in order to, in addition to randomized controlled trials, to meet the challenges of evaluating complex interventions, which we're often talking about, involving diverse populations, which we are talking about here, with variable comorbidities. They got some has heart failure and dementia and renal disease, and some have that same, but also diabetes and visual impairment. But we want to be inclusive in these kind of evaluations. Receiving individualized care plans. So it's not a specific, here's what you're all getting. No, you're getting this and you're getting that because you're individualizing your care plan. What are your goals of care? What do you want in a rapidly evolving healthcare system? That's a huge challenge. But how do we work together to develop that? So my last slide here, effective integration of technology. I think it's helpful if we focus on the specific needs of the individual, if we empower individuals, as we've said. Bring healthcare to the home. I think, to me, that's a big driver, something I'd like to achieve, be a part of and help move along. Really focus on that concept of optimal independence, safety, health, and purpose. I believe we can increase access, improve quality, and lower cost of care. And some of the conversations I have challenges with getting the resources for this population. And I'll just say, I think, as long as I've been in this and go through a couple of White House conferences on aging, it does seem like we have a societal challenge. There's a tendency to sort of ignore, drift away from the aging population? How do we get through that? And when I say focus on the 5% that accounts for 50% of healthcare costs, I have a concern that some may look at that and say, ah, yeah, I know, but we've got to build a, another intensive care unit or something, and that's really unfortunate that there's that 5% there. But to make that a little bit more real, I say, do you understand what that 5% is? That's not some small, marginalized, disadvantaged group that we can ignore for many reasons. But one of them, practical reason, is if we ignore them, they get more expensive. But the other is, this is not some small, marginalized population that, is out there. This represents every one of us at some phase in our lives. Thank you.
Let me say just a few things to get started. When Tom was talking, he was rightfully and very appropriately talking about the 5% that are consuming, first that are deeply suffering, and also are consuming a large amount of the resources that are available in healthcare. They deserve it, given what they've served in the country, and there's just no question that's a laudable and terribly important topic. My focus is completely opposite. It's on the other 95%. In the folks that I'm dealing with, and that our research team is dealing with, there are the healthcare field is basically a periodic visitor in the lives of these patients. They aren't. It isn't every day by a far stretch of the imagination. It's not every day. And as the result of that, what we're trying to do is to keep these people in their home as long as we possibly can. Keep them active, keep them engaged, keep them healthy. And the approach that we're taking, therefore, is probably very different. One of them is it's a community approach. We started with an attempt to really try to figure out what's going on in the community, and so we use what's community-based participatory research or specific methodology, asset-based community development. We chose 3 counties in the state of Wisconsin, 1 urban, 1 rural, and 1 suburban. And in each one of those counties, we started off by creating a team of the community leaders. For instance, in Richland County, there was the mayor, there was the police chief, there was all sorts of other leaders. Now, that was a rural community. In an urban community, we chose leaders of industry who would be working with us on this thing. And we started with that team. That team each nominated a series of volunteers, and we came up with about 50 volunteers in each community. Those volunteers then went out and interviewed elderly people in their home. By the way, I in fact love the term elderly. Elders are supposed to be wise, they're supposed to be respected, and so I think the term is fine. And in running it by our people, our elderly people who are working with us, it's the term they chose. So I think it works okay for us, maybe not for others. These volunteers went out and interviewed people, and the questions they asked were first, what are the assets that the community offers to you? And what are the assets that you personally have? And then what are your challenges? A lot of people have been working on this particular thing from many different disciplines, and I think it's important to note that it's not just systems engineers that are involved. What I'm going to try to do is to talk about the technology that we've developed that is intended to achieve health, and it doesn't focus, frankly, very much at all on health care. And one of the things that I want to also chat about is the role that we have found for mobile devices and for sensors, and then also talk about something I think is really important as more and more data is gathering, what we can do about analytics. I'm not going to go over all of this stuff, but in the slides later on, if you're interested, basically what this attempts to do is to list the 10 things that I think, frankly, are needed if you're going to develop a system to help people age in place. It's got to be a system of long duration. It's got to be one that is assertive. It can't sit back and wait for the person to come to it. It needs to have monitoring, and sometimes that involves sensors. Families need to be a key part of it. It needs to have prompts and reminders. Decision making, I'm less interested in than once you make a decision, how do you make it happen? Reinterpretation of your feelings so you don't continually beat on yourself. Personal, family, and clinician communication. And the key point in that word is family. The idea that patients, when they do come in contact with the healthcare field, come in contact often with a family member. And as a result of that, we need to be building in systems to respect that. Social support is necessary, and so is analytics to use the stuff that we've got in a helpful way. I mentioned these 3 counties that we're working in.
Gwen is 81 years old and lives alone in the house she shared with her late husband Donald in Richland Center, Wisconsin. She's been by herself for 7 years and has gotten along fine until a couple of years ago. Seemingly all at once, her best friend Gail died. Then Gwen slipped in the bathtub, breaking her wrist, and was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. It was a rough couple of months, and it seemed like just about everything was difficult to do subsequently. Even the things that were easy before. Even the things she used to enjoy. With Gail gone, she sometimes felt like there wasn't much reason to even bother getting out of bed. And she wasn't the only one affected. Her oldest son, Ron, lives 4 miles away, on the other side of town. The worst part about all of this was how guilty Gwen felt about having to call Ron for help a couple of times a week, sometimes every day. Fortunately, about a year ago, the folks at the local ADRC set her up with eChess. It's late November on a Tuesday morning. Gwen wakes up at 7 a.m., a bit later than usual, and makes coffee. Even before she opens her morning paper, she sits in front of the touchscreen display on her kitchen table and checks her eChess screen. She sees she has an in-home nurse visit scheduled at 4 p.m. today, and she notices the reminder to herself to make sure and vote. She's got 2 new messages, one sent by her granddaughter, Katie, looks like it's got some more pics of little Jared, and one from her exercise team. There's a new goal set, 4 15-minute dumbbell sessions for the week. She has yet to let her team down, though the exercises can sometimes get a bit tedious. She looks at the pics of Jared right away. He looks just like Ron did when he was little, but will respond later tonight. After the paper, it's laundry day, and she's got cookie baking on the mind. The kitchen smells like ginger snaps. An eChess alert sounds, and she ignores it because she's on the phone with Ron. When she's done talking, she walks to the kitchen table and taps OK on the screen. It seems you've been spending more time in bed than usual. Are you feeling dizzy or lightheaded? She answers no. Make sure you call your doctor if you start to. You are almost out of warfarin. Would you like to order more for delivery? She again answers no, as she enjoys picking it up herself. It's a chance for her to get some air and to see pharmacist Chad, who makes her laugh. And so handsome. She gets in her car and heads to the pharmacy. Inside, Chad pulls up an eChess report and notices that it looks like she has been experiencing more fatigue and swelling of the ankles than usual in the last couple of weeks. When he asks her if she's been consistently taking her Lasix pills, she comes clean with him. Reading the paper every morning, Gwen has developed strong feelings about this election period. She wants to stop to vote at the community center on the way home, but she's not familiar with the route and not feeling as comfortable as she used to behind the wheel. She says community center into her customized GPS unit and is directed on a route adjusted especially for her preferences, avoiding left turns on any busy streets. She knows that's where a lot of folks end up in trouble. When she's done voting, all she has to do is press home on the screen and follow the special route back. Receiving medical services at home could be stressful for Gwen. It used to be difficult to keep track of who was coming, when, and for what, and she felt anxious sitting around the house waiting. Another eChess alert sounds. On the screen is a picture of Christine, Gwen's nurse, and a notice that she would be 15 minutes late today. Good to know. Christine shows up about a quarter after and checks in by inserting a thumb drive into the computer on the table. Christine is the only one Gwen knows who can stick in an IV needle without causing any pain, which is why she gets a cookie on her way out. And when a survey pops up asking Gwen how Christine did, a 5-star rating. Gwen actually found Christine using the service dependability feature, scheduling appointments with her because she had been rated highly by others who needed similar services. As Gwen is watching Murder, She Wrote, an iPad vibrates on the coffee table. She picks it up and sees it's a weather alert. Looks like it's going to snow tonight and tomorrow morning. She watches a brief instructional video on how to use GERIATRICS and walk safely on ice. She's been leery of all things slippery since her fall in the tub, so she listens closely. She already knows that little knuckleheaded Johnny from down the street will be over to shovel first thing in the morning, as he always is. A while back, EHS asked her what she liked to do, and she entered in cooking, state history, and of course, Murder, She Wrote. Later, a community organizer called her up and asked her if she would be interested in swapping some cookies and impromptu state history chats, both of particular interest to the young knuckleheaded Johnny, for some snow shoveling, which her wrist prevented her from doing. They struck a deal. Johnny would shovel, and Gwen would bake and teach. Johnny's parents were thrilled to have him out of the house now and again. Johnny's mother wearily refers to him as a boy with way too much energy. Ron is the only one of her 4 children that still lives in the area, and though he would have never said so to his mother, he was at the end of his rope before EHS. He'd been the coach of the JV Hornets basketball team for almost 20 years, but when his mother got sick, he almost had to quit coaching entirely. He had to be over at her house almost every night. There were no other options. Things were okay now, though. He could check up on her from work. He'd log on, and he could see that she was up and had eaten, using sensors in the living room and in the fridge. He could see that she had received the in-home nursing that she required once every 2 weeks, and if anything seemed off, or if he just wanted to check in, he could video chat with her and see how she's doing. Part of what allowed Ron to keep coaching the kids was the help he got from other caregivers in his EHS network. He'd logged on to chat rooms to find out how others had successfully dealt with chronic pain management, etc. And it was always refreshing to talk to people who understood how hard it could be caring for a parent. Perhaps the best part, he could go visit his daughter and new grandson in Minneapolis as often as he wanted to, because he had connected with a network of neighbors who agreed to step in and respond to alerts in his absence, in case Gwen ever had trouble while he was away. Gwen is usually able to keep herself occupied during the day, but at night, when there isn't much going on, she often thinks of Donald, and sometimes a terrible sadness washes over her. Gail had lost her husband, too, in the same year as Gwen. Gwen and Gail used to trade off visiting each other in their homes in the afternoons. It always made both of them feel better to talk, even if it was about nothing in particular. When Gwen first tried EHS, she had learned to use the simple video chat and email features so that she could talk to her granddaughter after she moved a year ago, and really wanted to be able to keep in touch, so she learned fast. She hadn't expected to use it for anything but that. Eventually, though, she followed the invitations made by EHS and joined a chat room. It was supposed to be a place to talk about cooking, but often the talk ended up being about nothing in particular, which was just fine with Gwen, though she did appreciate when others shared pictures of their cookies, turkeys, cherry pies. It isn't as good as visiting with Gail, but it's always there for her, and somehow makes the sad evenings less sad. Saving her favorite part of the day for last, Gwen opens up the message and writes back to her granddaughter, Katie. She pulls up a picture of Ron when he was little and sends it along for comparison. See, same crooked smile, she writes. She clicks on send. Time for bed.
So that video was filled with lies. One of the lies is you saw the sensor going into the bed. That was vetoed. And our approach has always been that we serve our customers first, and as a result of that, what we did was listen very carefully to them, and so that went out of the way. We also had in there an indication that we could actually put up pictures of the visiting nurse, and that's not the case. There are too many people out there, and so that didn't work as intended. But I think this does bring down the point of really deeply understanding your customers. We require everybody on our tech team, all programmers, screen designers, and that kind of stuff, to volunteer 4 hours a week at a senior center or to work with elderly people, because I don't want their job to be a job. I want it to be a calling. And I want them to know who they're working for, who their customer is. And so as a result of that, I think this helps them be more sensitive to where people are coming through. When I was first asked to work on addiction, I got myself admitted for heroin addiction at 2 treatment agencies, one in New York and one in Madison. And I went through all of the questioning. I went through detox. I slept all night in the detox facility. I spent my time in the residential care treatment, not really learning what's going on, but being able to get enough feeling for what it's like that I wouldn't be dealing with this as an academic. I'd be dealing with it as a person who has had at least some experience in that area. And so we do a lot of different kinds of things of that type to personally experience what elderly people are going through. And then we tried to build the system around assets. Now this is, I think, an important slide. It sort of fundamentally tells us where we're trying to go. You know, the outcomes we're seeking are on the right-hand side. Stay at home, fewer admissions, improved quality of life. Now, if you talk to clinicians, and they're absolutely right, that the primary causes of admissions are going to be falls, inappropriate use of medication, dementia, and depression. But the elderly people don't see it that way. When we did our needs assessment with them, they said, I'm lonely, I'm isolated, I don't know what's going on in the community, and I can find transportation to my doctor, but even if I knew about the concert, I'd have no transportation to get there. And so we said to ourselves, okay, now, suppose we were able to eliminate loneliness and isolation. Would that reduce depression? If they weren't depressed, would that reduce falls? If they, if they weren't depressed, would they adhere to their medication more appropriately? And so our, not even a hypothesis, because we're not going to test it, our philosophy is, let's deal with the stuff on the left-hand side. Let's deal with that first and foremost, and we'll go from there. And so that's why we take it. Now, if you take a look, for instance, at our addiction system that we've got that for the VA and other places, that's what our face page looks like. Here's our face page for elderly folks in the Elder Tree system. And so we've worked real hard to try to keep things super simple. Notice in the upper right-hand corner, virtually every screen a person goes to has a video that they can listen to and watch that tells them about that aspect of Elder Tree. And so you click on that, you get down to conversations. In conversations, you get down to public discussions. In public discussions, you get down to these different kinds of things. And so, we try to make it easy to get down. Now, my feeling is that it's really important for us to understand the concept of bundling. When we started working with the VA in terms of medication management kind of stuff, one of the things that we tried was HS, our addiction thing by itself. And then we decided, let's bundle it with medication-assisted therapy, with group psychotherapy, and see what happens. And what we found was in the field test, not a randomized controlled trial, we're moving into that now, but that we were able to drop readmissions by about 80%. By bundling services of the technology to go with other important components. And I think that bundling is really, really, really important. A couple of thoughts. The two most important kinds of people in an elderly person's life are their family and the healthcare system, or the financing system that gives them access to healthcare. It's also their two biggest enemies. The family can take away my car keys. The family can say it's time to go to a nursing home. The family spies on me. That, in some cases, couldn't be further from the truth. But the elderly people are so concerned about scams, and they're so worried about it, they really don't have a lot of trust in anything. And I think that we need to be careful about that. The second point is that our work really, we don't use a smartphone. We use a touchscreen laptop because elderly people want the bigger screen and they can't deal with mice. I'm not going to go into the analytics much at all, except to say that that I think we have a great opportunity through stochastic optimization, through machine learning, through behavioral decision theory and things like that, to aggregate the information together and make it useful for us in terms of deciding what kind of technology to offer to folks at what point in time. And I think that's an area of big need for research. That's it. So.
I'm going to a little bit more focus on technology and what we think is possible in terms of creating a more flexible environment in the future to help with aging in place and keeping an individual in an environment that they are comfortable and familiar with. So let's look at a place in which many people would like to age. It's their own home. So when we look at the various systems in a home, what do you think is the least reliable system in a home? Anybody? Well, anything, come on. Okay, so the least reliable system is the people who are living there, okay? And that's the one that we have to most compensate for. The second one is most likely the furnace. The washing machine is a close third. But it's really the people that we need to be able, and the people's ability that we need to be able to compensate for. So we talk about using a mechanism called the Internet of Things. So what is the Internet of Things? Well, think about what your house would say about you if it could talk. That's scary to anybody? Well, so we're moving to an environment where everything in your house can talk. Okay? Hopefully it'll only talk to one another, devices in your home, but it can also talk to your children, your family, your doctors, your friends. So think of that as the first major change, that every object in the house that knows something about you can say something about you, can transmit some data about you and itself. It's in its own environment. Let's get a little bit more formal. What is an Internet of Things? So it's an environment in which every object or people are provided with a unique identifier and the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring human interaction to cause that. So the refrigerator can talk to the stove. The microwave can talk to the frozen food package. So what are the kind of functions that we're going to perform with these kind of capabilities? And the fundamental functions are to be able to sense and communicate. Sense the environment, count something in the environment, measure something in the environment, and hold that knowledge, be able to respond to a query about that information, be able to query another object about its status or environmental information, and optionally perturb its environment as a result of the information it's just collected. Now, when we do have an object that does all of those, including perturbing its environment after it's been through some decision processes, what do we call it? Anyone? It's a robot, right. So what we're ultimately talking about here is embedded robotics. Okay, so it starts at a simple mode, but just in the world today we have embedded motors everywhere. We will soon, at some point, have embedded intelligence everywhere, which you already find, and within reasonable time we'll have what we call embedded robotics. So think of this as a progression in terms of being able to build devices and systems that will help the elderly in their place. So let me just take a quick look at the progression of this kind of technology, where it started, where it is now, and where it's going. So I'm very proud to say that the first documented internet appliance that we know of was at my institution when I was there and was developed in my own lab. It was an augmentation to a Coca-Cola dispensing machine. Why did one need that to be on the internet? Well, at that time, back in the early 80s, people were mainly using computers from terminal rooms, and it would get hot and sweaty in there, and people would want to go down, particularly graduate students want to go down and get a Coke to keep them awake and keep them cool. But you don't want to go down and get a Coke if it's not cold. So how do you know if it's cold? So we wired up an internet interface for the Coke machine, which would keep records of when the Coke went into each column of Cokes in the unit. And so from that, you could tell which ones were cold and whether the next one you would get would be cold and which column it would be in. And the way you'd query it is just, those of you who are old enough on the internet remember the finger protocol. The finger protocol is you type someone's name and you look for them at a particular location. So if you would finger Coke at CMU, it would tell you what the status of the Coke machine was. Now, of course, this is of use within the graduate student body, but it was worldwide accessible. So everybody in the world would know whether they could get the next cold Coke at CMU. So again, it had value to that community, and it helped improve their life. It was soon copied by MIT and wound up with comparable things everywhere. So what do we have today that's making all this much more reality and not so specially customized? Well, we certainly had the explosion in wireless communication. We certainly have massive improvements in the size and quality of sensors, spurred on a lot of them by MEMS technology, microelectronic mechanical systems. Something else that had to come to pass to enable this was new internet protocols. So IP version 6, it has a huge address space. It has an address space so large that one could address every atom on Earth. In fact, it's so large one could address every atom on 100 Earths. So we're able to cover every object that exists and that can be uniquely addressed. The other thing that's evolved is a more societal one, and that's the world of open app developers. Most of the applications run on your smartphones were developed by independent developers using open interfaces and program interfaces that are published. So we can see now that every object ought to be able to talk to one another. We have lots of people developing applications for it. So what's the Achilles heel of all of this? Power. I mean, right now, we have all these objects around the house, but none of my chairs are plugged into the wall. How is my chair going to communicate? So we do have to look towards lower power communications, lower power sensing. And how is this possible? Well, actually using solar power is becoming much more of a reality. The devices in your house will be able to communicate as long as the lights are on, and they can maybe store some energy. So again, these are all factors that are producing technology base and infrastructure and an economy that enables this whole development to be explosive. What are some examples you see with respect to it now? Well, one is the Nest thermometer, which actually knows when you are home, understands your living patterns, and can set your thermostat time-wise to provide appropriate temperature for you in the most economical way. The interesting thing is that it gets to know your activity, and that's what it's learning, and that's how it plans its status. The frightening thing to me about that is that it was recently bought by Google, so now Google knows your whereabouts as well within your own home and what rooms you're walking around. So is that good? I don't know. Another interesting example is what's called capsule endoscopy, a pill camera. So here's a little diagram of it. I don't know if this works. a little diagram in the right. You swallow the pill, and it really has embedded cameras, and can give a good sense of what your body is doing. It has chemical sensors as well as video. So that's where we are today. That's not an uncommon thing. It's used in actual practice today, clinical practice today. Okay, what's forthcoming? So think of this as it grows a little bit more. We have things that we call smart dust, in which the computers and sensors are actually no smaller than a grain of sand. So what can you do with something like this? Well, you can spray it over large areas. You can inject it into objects. One application is actually that the military has picked up is actually spraying it in urban war settings. So lots of practical applications as well. Another interesting application is mind control, and we talk about brain-computer interfaces. We really will be able to turn lights on and off and the TV on and off, and et cetera, but just thinking about it some years down the line. How practical, how useful is that? That's another question, but the capability is certainly there as we show that we can now control all kinds of instruments with brain-computer interfaces. What are the kinds of applications? Well, we've talked about a number of applications to be very useful to us: tracking behavior, understanding the situation, the environment better, and making some sensor-driven decision analysis. There's also the more complex value in terms of automation and control, being able to optimize processes, optimize energy utilization, resource consumption, essentially drive a complex autonomous system. So in the home, what's a complex autonomous system? Well, actually, your washing machine is pretty complex autonomous system, does a great deal of processing on its own, and think about when it can communicate with you and the other devices in the home. What are we really trying to do with all of this? Well, the point I'm trying to make today is how this technology enables us to support IADLs, because IADLs are really the crux of when we can stay in the home and when we have to go outside of it or have help come in. So as long as we can sustain this Lawton's list of IADLs, we're in good shape. So how can we use this technology to do that? Again, one of the problems that people, particularly with cognitive decline, have, there are all kinds of memory issues. The most critical one with respect to performing tasks in the home, performing the IADLs, is procedural memory. So it's skills that you have, it's how you perform tasks, what are the steps in a task. So let's just look for a moment about how we can compensate for diminishment of your procedural memory, since that's what's keeping you from getting these tasks done. So there are lots of examples, both now and forthcoming, with respect to hygiene. There's a company, Pixie Scientific, that makes smart diapers. Uses are obvious there. For medication, consistency is extremely important. And we now have what's called ingestible sensors that can go along with every pill. I mean, so you don't have to swallow a battery. When it hits your stomach acid, it releases enough things into your system that a patch that you're wearing on can now detect that change in your fluids and bodily system and broadcast that. Okay, so you create a record that it's been taken, again, without having to swallow the power source. We can go on and on. Food preparation. Everything is labeled. It's now with a code, but now you can build camera systems very inexpensively that actually recognize most food products. But again, if you take your food package, be it frozen chicken or what have you, and hold it up to a particular scanner, it can figure out how to cook it based upon its its weight and what it is, because it has the identifier that describes what it is. It has its weight, et cetera. So we can really start to bring these appliances together. You pull something from the cabinet, a can of something or a box of something. It knows that you've pulled out. The environment can know when you throw it away, so it knows you need to order more. So now you have all these helpers for doing your shopping. We have systems of which you can that help you prepare your medical devices. Finances, we've seen all kinds of things that exist nowadays with all kinds of warnings as to when you go over specific limits, be they in number or quantity or value, and can then challenge whether you want to proceed with that transaction. One of the biggest problems we have in nursing homes is people lose things, and the staff winds up spending incredible time looking for the glasses or the hearing aids or whatnot. So actually just something we did, we just put RFID readers on door frames, and then you'd know every time those objects would pass, and you'd at least be able to locate the room that it was in. On and on. So all this technology enables us to implement what people have been building in custom ways in smart homes all over the country in many of the projects you've heard about. Other very valuable things happening is the innovation spurred by low-cost desktop manufacturing, the so-called maker revolution, the 3D printing. Now you can build devices, prototypical devices, very inexpensively. The affordability of all this derives from the open interfaces that exist, and building these applications so they're usable by all consumers for multiple purposes, so that the use in the home for the aging individual is just a byproduct. So we have a world focused on technology and economy and entrepreneurial development that will help satisfy all this. So the final message is that like General Electric used to say, IoT will bring good things to life. Thank you.